Hello, hello. The name is Regis Kilbin, and the game is Here's the Storm. And today we're going to be talking about a talent build for Lieutenant Morales that I'm calling the Shield Lieutenant Morales. And it's named the Shield Lieutenant Morales because this build is all about giving you some extra survivability. Because the medic is one of the squishiest heroes in the game with only 2,700 standard health at level 20. She's very easy for enemy teams to burn down if they focus her. So it's important to pick your talents in a way that can help keep you alive through hectic or chaotic team fights because you can't heal if you aren't alive. So it might be tempting to go for talents to give you a little extra healing or help your teammates, but with Lieutenant Morales, you kind of have to play you first. You have to focus on yourself. It's all me first with this character, otherwise you won't be able to do anything at all. So the Shield Lieutenant Morales build, let's run through the talents real quickly before we go into them in more detail. We're going to start off at level 1 with Trauma Trigger, level 4 with Advanced Block, level 7 with Irradiate, 10 is Stim Drone for our Heroic, Couples Therapy at 13, 16 is Shield Sequencer, and finally at level 20, Caduceus Reactor 2.0. So, going into these talents in a little bit more detail will help us kind of reveal the general strategy and mindset behind this build. And starting off level 1 and Trauma Trigger, this allows you to gain an Untalented Safeguard, which is your W ability, that automatically activates if you drop below 50% health and take damage, and that automatic effect has a 20-second cooldown. So, Safeguard reduces damage you take by 25%. Basically what this does is if you get focused down in a team fight scenario, anytime you get hit below 50%, this thing will trigger to essentially give you a little bit extra survivability. Now, it's only 25%, so it's not going to work wonders or any miracles, and it won't save you from impending doom. But it does give you a little bit extra flexibility with your positioning and aggression. So if you need to chase that Illidan or Butcher just a little bit farther to keep them up or set up a big engagement, you can feel a little bit safer with an ability like this covering your butt a little. So up next at level 4, Advanced Block is going to do very much the same thing, but it's not just in emergency situations. Advanced Block gives you a little bit more health to work with throughout the entire game. This periodically reduces damage received from basic attacks by 50%, and unlike a standard block on a tank, this one actually has 3 charges, so it's even better. So this essentially just increases your health pool in a secondary manner. So melee assassins, which can be incredibly deadly against Lieutenant Morales if they get right in your face and lock you down, like Illidan or Butcher or even Thrall. And they swing for very high amounts of health. So being able to mitigate 3 of those attacks actually goes pretty far. You know, at level 20, when Butcher's hitting for almost 500 damage, this is almost worth 1,500 points of health right here on its own. So you can see why that's pretty important for giving you that survivability. And keep in mind, if you don't have these first 2 talents, you're just so easy to shred down that, yeah, it's unfortunate you have to give up a cool talent like Bioshield or something like Prolonged Safeguard that can help your teammates. But if you didn't have these, you'd be dead anyway. So it's already pretty challenging to play Lieutenant Morales as a solo healer in my mind. And without these talents, it's especially hard because she's just so easy against skilled teams to burn down that she's frankly quite useless. At level 7, we're going to go with Irradiate. Your healing beam grants an aura around anything it's on that does 50 damage per second to anything near it. So we can actually watch this in action on a minion. And this is a pretty neat trick. You can actually clear minion waves pretty well this way. You'll see those attacks of 25 damage hopping off everything around our minion here. This is essentially wave clear for Lieutenant Morales. You can see the minion I'm targeting here has stayed alive, even with Arthas beating on it and the minion wave beating on it. So it gives you a sort of AoE clear that she otherwise severely lacks. Morales is very bad at killing minion waves, and wave clear is pretty important. So Irradiate allows you to do that well. Or not well, but better than normal. Now, it's not a survival talent by any means, Irradiate. It's really more of an aggressive one, but The other options here, clear, cleanse, and call down mule, can all be a little bit more situational and aren't the kind of general default talent that you're going to want to pick. Clear certainly could arguably give you some extra survivability, but your displacement grenade's on a 12-second cooldown, and it just isn't going to impact the fight multiple times in very significant ways. So the gains you get here from a 33% explosion radius and a extra knockback, are not enough to make up for the offensive advantage that Irradiate gives you. So it might not fit the theme of this build, but it's just too good of a talent to pass up in general. And that actually continues with our level 10 heroic ability, Stim Drone. This 90-second cooldown heroic grants an allied hero 75% attack speed and 25% movement speed for 10 seconds. Again, this is not a defensive or survival-based talent. There's just a few of those in this build. This one is kind of just the default strong heroic for Morales to take. Now, certainly Medevac Dropship can be good on certain maps or with certain team comps, but Stim Drone in general is going to be more reliable and more useful in most scenarios than is Medevac Dropship. So it's great with somebody like Illidan or Butcher or a melee assassin or even your tank to give them that extra damage and extra engagement ability and extra reach when you're chasing down opponents or trying to pick a fight. So Stim Drone can do a ton of work, and I think it makes Morales a pretty unique support character compared to other heroes. At level 13, this is another talent that supports our shield name and gives us extra survivability. It's Couples Therapy. While channeling your healing beam on another hero, you, Lieutenant Morales, are healed for 25% of the healing amount for an additional 4 mana per second. So it's 15 mana, takes it up to 19 total. It's not that big of a difference. But this is essentially the only way you can currently self-medicate as Lieutenant Morales. So let's see this in action here, just show you what it's like. We're going to take some damage. Hit us hard, Arthas. Arthas, attack us. So this is actually going to be challenging with two healers to show this off, but because Malfurion needs to take a little damage too. Let's see if we can do this. So yeah, you'll see here we're ticking off for 53. So it's not a ton, but it is something, right? You can't cast Q on yourself normally, so Couples Therapy is the only option you have. If you're low on health, you can just pop your Q on anybody, and it'll start ticking off to preserve a little bit of your health and give you just a little bit extra life, healing over time, basically. It also, in team fights, just, it does give you extra healing, and you're going to soak up some AoE damage and incidental hits here and there while you're healing your primary engager with Healing Beam. So it can just help keep you topped off while you're focusing on rotating around and healing everybody else in the fight. So it's good to have, just to keep yourself full at all times and not put yourself at risk by dropping down to 50 or 40% damage or 40% health from just random blizzards and flame strikes and cheap damage that you otherwise shouldn't be taking. So Couples Therapy makes you a little bit stronger and adds some survivability. Level 16, we're going to go with Shield Sequencer. After casting Safeguard, which is your W, you can cast it a second time within 3 seconds at no cost. So you'll see this in action. We can cast this on Malfurion. Not sure why that's not allowing me to recast it. Maybe it did and I didn't notice. Oh yeah, there we go. It went off twice. I'm just dumb. So essentially you get double the effect here for the same amount of mana, which is great because Safeguard's a pretty nifty little ability that really adds up in team fights. And what I like to do here is keep one of these on myself. So you can start with yourself and cast it on somebody else, or vice versa. But between that Safeguard and your Safeguard that procs at 50% health from our level 1 talent, you have quite a bit of extra damage mitigation on yourself. So it makes you a little bit less susceptible, and enemy teams will start to learn as they focus you down that if you're just a little bit too hard to kill and they take a little too long getting to you and trying to burn you down, then your enemy team will have a lot of time to counter and set up counter kills. So giving yourself that extra survivability will have to alter the strategy of the enemy team a little bit and allow your team to do some pretty cool stuff. So shield sequencer is not only good if you're getting hit, it's also good in general. You can cast it on two other teammates if you have a melee assassin and a tank. They can both receive that damage mitigation. And it's all for free, so that's great for Lieutenant Morales, who is typically a pretty mana challenged hero. And then finally at level 20 we're going to go with Caduceus Reactor 2.0. While Caduceus Reactor, which is your trait, is active, you restore 8 mana per second and gain a shield that absorbs 210 damage, stacking up to 5 times. So Caduceus Reactor is your trait that if you haven't taken damage in a while, it'll restore 3% of your health every once in a while. We can watch this thing in action by taking some damage here. Okay, so now we'll go out and this will turn on once our shield starts glowing green, which is the visual indicator. And you'll see my health is going up, but I'm also gaining a shield here. And you'll note that that shield is worth well over 1,000 points of damage, and it lasts basically indefinitely because Caduceus Reactor is essentially active at all times, right, if you're not taking damage. So this basically takes you from a 2,700 health hero to a slightly meatier 3,800 health hero at the beginning of any given fight, which is fantastic when you're trying to survive and stay alive against enemy teams who know how squishy you are and want you dead at all costs. So between Caduceus Reactor 2.0, Couples Therapy, Advanced Block, and Trauma Trigger, you have 4 talents here that are all dedicated to making you a little tankier and giving you that survivability. If you don't have these talents, trust me when I say that you will die easily and you will die often. So it's actually pretty vital that you at least grab a handful of these, and in my recommendation, you actually grab all 4. Your healing beam is going to do enough work on its own. It doesn't need to be talented up in spec to give extra healing. So don't sacrifice yourself for your teammates when you can keep them alive much longer as long as you survive too. So the thing about this build is you still have to mind your positioning. You can't just be super greedy, but you do have a little bit more flexibility. You can dive a little bit deeper with your enemy teams. It allows them to engage a little bit harder without risking everything. It gives you some survivability in the mid game as well as a ton of survivability in the late game. You just have to master the rhythm of Lieutenant Morales. Make sure you're not soaking up area of effect damage by being too deep, stepping out for just a few seconds until your Caduceus Reactor pops back on, gaining your shield back, gaining your life back, while still trying to manage your Qs on your teammates who are in the front line. If you are mindful of your own health and spamming Q like a madman on all 4 of your teammates, Lieutenant Morales can actually be a strong solo support healer. It's definitely challenging. She doesn't have all the utility of others, but when played correctly and talented well, she has tons of potential to do some pretty cool stuff. So I hope you have fun with the Shield Lieutenant Morales build out there. I think you'll enjoy it. As far as supports go, she's really quite active and impactful, so she can be a ton of fun to play. Good luck out there, and until next time, game on.